Okay, he's in the house?
Yes.
Okay,
He's threatening my parents. Please.
He's okay.
All right, just relax. Is he still there?
In my room, he put his hand over my mouth.
Okay.
And then held a knife to my throat.
Okay.
Told me if I screamed, he'll kill me.
All right.
Do you know what true courage looks like when faced with unimaginable danger? Have you ever wondered how far a family could go to protect one another from a threat lurking in the dark? One quiet summer night, the McDonough family's peaceful home turned into the stage of a harrowing battle. An intruder, masked like a shadow and armed with sinister intentions, broke into their lives. But this wasn't just any intruder. It was Adam Leroy Lane, a trucker with a deadly obsession, later dubbed the Ninja Serial Killer. But do you know how did they overpower a man capable of such calculated brutality? What evidence did they uncover that linked him to a trail of horrifying crimes? Join us as we are going to delve into the story of McDonough family, a tale of resilience, courage, and the unyielding power of love. On July 13th, 2007, a quiet suburban neighborhood in West Hanover Township, Dauphin County, was shattered by a horrifying event. The day had started like any other for the McDonough family. Todd and Darlene lived a seemingly normal life with their two children, Nick and Nicole.
Darlene was my wife and friend, and she's my partner in life. I'd known her since I was 15. At 10 o'clock, I opened the door and told her I was headed to bed, and she said she'd be up in a little bit. I kind of laughed, because I knew better, because she just would be out on the phone till late.
However, beneath the surface of their household, tension had been brewing for some time. Todd was a reserved man who preferred an early night's rest, while Darlene was more outgoing, often enjoying late-night conversations with friends. Their differences had caused a strain in their marriage, but no one could have predicted the tragedy that was about to unfold.
Darlene was very outgoing, she was very friendly, and she liked to go out to local watering holes.
Her husband, not so much. He was one of those people that liked to go to bed early.
That evening, Todd retired to bed around 10 p.m. after reminding Darlene, who was on the phone with a friend, not to stay up too late. Darlene laughed, assuring him she would join him soon, though Todd knew better. Darlene had a habit of staying up late, engrossed in her conversations.
Darlene's friend hears the call sort of abruptly end, a sort of muffled sound, an abrupt end to a call that, in his experience, wouldn't normally happen, talking to Darlene.
Hours passed uneventfully until, at around 2 a.m., her friend on the other end of the line heard a blood-curdling scream. The call ended abruptly, leaving her friend in a state of panic. Sensing something was terribly wrong, he rushed to Darlene's house to check on her. When he arrived, the scene that greeted him was chilling. Darlene's lifeless body lay on the patio, her throat brutally slashed. Frantic, he banged on the door, hoping someone inside would respond. But there was only silence. With no other option, he dialed 911.
My bedroom door opened up and guys were screaming at me to get my hands in the air. I thought it might be a home invasion or something. Then I started seeing flash photography going off. I knew that wasn't a good sign. That's when they told me that Darlene was dead and she was killed at the hands of another person. That's when things started to fall apart for me. I remember hearing my son scream. He was in the kitchen still handcuffed. He broke the chair he was sitting in.
The police and first responders arrived swiftly, their flashing lights illuminating the grim scene. Inside the house, Todd was jolted awake by loud voices demanding he raise his hands. Disoriented and confused, he initially thought it was a home invasion. But as the chaos unfolded and he caught glimpses of officers taking photographs, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Darlene was dead, murdered in cold blood.
One of the investigators asked me if I owned any knives. I said, I own a lot of knives. He asked me what I meant by that. I said, I work construction. I have a leather shop. I said, I have all kinds of knives. So he drew me a picture of the murder weapon, asked me if I owned any knives that looked like that. I said no. That was my first moment of thought I was in real trouble.
There was no signs of a break-in or any intruder.
Darlene was targeted by someone she knew. someone that knew she liked to sit out in the patio late at night. So this would indicate somebody that she had a relationship with.
Human nature is such that emotions are often triggered between people who are close to each other. The police have to probe into a marriage under these circumstances.
You had a son and a husband in the house that claimed they did not hear anything, did not hear, oh my God, oh my God. Most spousal murders are passionate, where an argument escalated to a physical fight, from a physical fight to...
The devastation of Darlene's death was compounded by the confusion and shock that followed.
My mom had no enemies. She was just great personality and was just loved by everybody. So it was kind of like, why would someone want to hurt her, let alone kill her? And who would do it? Who could be such a monster?
Todd recalled the heartbreaking moment when he heard his son, Nick, screaming from the kitchen, where he had been restrained by the police. He broke the chair he was sitting in, Todd recounted, his voice heavy with emotion. The family's world was crumbling, and as the investigation progressed, the weight of suspicion began to fall on Todd himself. The lack of forced entry at the crime scene led investigators to believe that Darlene's killer was someone she knew, someone who was familiar with her habit of sitting outside late at night. This theory directed their focus inward, prompting them to scrutinize Todd's every move. He was subjected to intense questioning, and when a polygraph test was administered, he failed. For the police, this failure seemed to confirm their suspicions. Todd's extensive collection of knives became another point of contention. When asked if he owned a weapon resembling the murder weapon, he denied it. Yet his response did little to alleviate the growing doubts surrounding his innocence. Despite Todd's protestations, the investigation seemed to be steering toward a conclusion that he had played a role in his wife's murder. The notion that a husband could harm his wife, especially in such a violent manner, was not uncommon in domestic homicide cases. Police theorized that an argument might have escalated into a physical altercation, culminating in the tragic act of violence. However, Todd's children, Nick and Nicole, steadfastly defended their father, struggling to reconcile their grief with the suspicion cast upon him. "My mom had no enemies," Nick said. "She was loved by everyone. Why would anyone want to hurt her, let alone kill her?" As the McDonough family grappled with their loss and the scrutiny of the investigation, the true killer was already miles away, preparing to strike again. The police, focused on Todd, had no idea that the murder of Darlene McDonough was not an isolated incident, but part of a disturbing pattern. Reports began surfacing of a man dressed in a ninja suit, armed with knives, roaming the streets and targeting random victims. The brutality of the attacks and the apparent randomness baffled investigators. At first glance, the incidents appeared unconnected, but a closer examination would reveal a chilling connection. The man behind these heinous crimes was following a meticulously planned script inspired by a movie. Scene by scene, he was bringing the film to life, using his victims as unwitting participants in his twisted narrative. What the killer didn't anticipate, however, was that his choice of the McDonough family would ultimately lead to his downfall. While the police were initially consumed by their investigation into Todd, they eventually uncovered evidence that pointed to a much larger and more sinister story. The discovery of the movie and its connection to the murders became the key to unraveling the case. Each attack mirrored specific scenes, providing a roadmap to the killer's actions. As the pieces began to fall into place, the true horror of the situation became clear. This was not a crime of passion or an act of random violence. It was the work of a calculating individual driven by a macabre obsession. The realization brought a new sense of urgency to the investigation. Connecting the dots between the murders and the movie was a breakthrough that shifted the focus away from Todd and toward the real perpetrator. As the police worked tirelessly to track down the killer, the McDonough family was left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. 2 weeks later, in a little quiet town called Bloomsbury, New Jersey, 38-year-old Monica Massaro went about her life as usual. Monica was well known around town for her friendly demeanor and love for live music shows. A regular at the local bar, she spent her evenings chatting with familiar faces. However, for the past few days, there had been no sign of Monica. In a town as small as Bloomsbury, her absence didn't go unnoticed. Monica owned a small cleaning business, and her clients relied on her dependable visits. When days passed without any word from her, concern began to grow. A local police officer was dispatched to check on Monica. When he arrived at her home, he noticed the front door was unlocked. He cautiously pushed it open, an unease settling over him.
When I checked the door to see if it was locked and wiggled the handle, kind of gave it a slight push, the door opened.
When I checked the door to see if it was locked and wiggled the handle, I gave it a slight push and it opened, he later recounted. Stepping inside, he found the first floor empty.
The door to that bedroom was open about 12 inches, and through that I could see a foot hanging off the side of a bed. When I opened the bedroom door, I saw a body that was completely drenched in blood, but it was evident that her throat had been slit. It was so gory that it almost didn't even look real.
It was just the type of crime that someone with an incredible amount of violence and rage would have done. We didn't have anybody that we would call suspects specifically, and that proved challenging for us.
Through all our processing, several days, we came up with no DNA that would link the crime to another person.
As he ascended the stairs, the sense of foreboding grew. The door to Monica's bedroom was slightly ajar, and through the narrow opening, he spotted a foot hanging off the side of the bed. When he fully opened the door, he was met with a scene of unimaginable horror. Monica's lifeless body lay drenched in blood, her throat brutally slashed. The violence was so grotesque, it almost didn't seem real. It was just the type of crime that someone with an incredible amount of rage would have committed, investigators said. The brutality of the murder shocked the quiet town. Despite extensive processing of the crime scene over several days, police found no DNA evidence that could point to a suspect. Residents began to report sightings of a strange man in the area. Witnesses described him shaking door handles and peering into windows on the night of Monica's murder. This unsettling detail led investigators to two possibilities. Either someone close to Monica had committed the crime, or a random, dangerous individual was targeting homes in the area.
There was someone out at the time when Monica was killed, shaking doors, looking through windows. So it opened up a scope of it's either going to be someone very close to Monica, or as we feared, it could be a random person that was out trying to get into houses.
Less than 24 hours later, in a nearby town, another chilling encounter unfolded. A woman walking her dog late at night saw a man standing in the street. He was dressed in black, with a mask covering his face and knives strapped to his waist. When he began walking toward her, she bolted back to her house, locked the doors, and called 911.
Please hurry, there's somebody outside my house. He's looking in all the windows.
Okay, what's the address?
Oh, he's trying to break in. Oh my God, somebody's trying to break in.
Okay, we have...
Somebody here.
Okay, these are going
trying to break in right now.
Okay, what part of the house is he at?
He's at the front door.
He's at the front door?
You might be in the house. I can hear something now.
Though the man disappeared before police arrived, she provided them with a description.
A man all dressed in black, walking away, looked like a ninja with like holsters sticking out of his sides, and then he turned and looked at me, and it just wasn't right. So I ran in the house, closed all the windows, and he followed me back.
He looked like a ninja, all in black with holsters sticking out of his sides. When he turned and looked at me, I just knew something wasn't right. Word of the masked man spread quickly, putting nearby towns on high alert. Authorities warned residents to lock their doors and remain vigilant. The murders and sightings spanned multiple towns with alarming speed, leaving police unable to identify a clear pattern. However, one gruesome detail connected the cases: a deep slash to the throat.
A man dressed in a ninja suit, reportedly armed with knives, has been spotted roaming the streets. Authorities are urging residents to lock their doors and remain vigilant.
Meanwhile, Todd McDonough, who was still being questioned about his wife Darlene's murder, found himself under increasing scrutiny. Despite solid alibis and the continuing string of murders, investigators couldn't fully eliminate him as a suspect. The killer's rampage showed no signs of stopping. Fear gripped each community as residents braced themselves, not knowing where he might strike next. But one family was about to face the nightmare head-on and alter the course of this terrifying story. On July 30th in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, the McDonough family was living their typical quiet life. Kevin and Jeannie McDonough had been high school sweethearts who built a loving home with their two children, Ryan and Shay. They were active in their community, attending church every Sunday, in participating in local events. On this particular evening, Shay returned home after spending time with friends. Thoughtful as always, she made sure the front door was unlocked in case her brother Ryan came home late. Around 4 a.m., a faint noise woke Shay from her sleep.
I wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to text me 2 hours later being like, hey, Shay, can you come unlock the door? It's locked.
Shay was being a good sister and looking out for her big brother.
Around 4 a.m., a faint noise woke Shay from her sleep. At first, she dismissed it as her imagination, but then she heard the unmistakable sound of glass breaking. Moments later, a shadowy figure appeared in her bedroom doorway. Her breath caught in her throat as the man stepped closer, a knife glinting in his hand. Without warning, he clamped a hand over her mouth and pressed the blade to her neck.
If you make any effing noise, I'm going to kill you. And that's when I just kind of went into panic, and I just started kicking. And I just pushed my back against the bed, hoping to make as much noise as possible so that my parents could wake up and hear me.
I heard a muffled sound, like a little whimper, come from the bedroom right next to us. And I thought that was odd. Shay must be having a bad dream or something. Kevin got up at the same time.
She said, I'll check on her. And I said, no, I'll check on her, which really isn't the norm. Usually I'm selfish and want to get all the sleep I need. And but that morning, something told me to get up.
Shay froze for a moment before instinct took over. She pushed back against her bed, kicking and thrashing to create as much noise as possible, hoping to wake her parents. Her muffled cries reached Kevin in Jeannie's room. Kevin stirred first, hearing what sounded like a whimper. I thought Shay must be having a bad dream or something, he later said. Though Jeannie offered to check on her, Kevin felt an inexplicable urge to go himself. When Kevin entered Shay's room, the scene before him was horrifying. A large man dressed entirely in black was holding a knife to his daughter. Without hesitation, Kevin lunged at the intruder, grabbing for the weapon.
My dad just jumped on top of him, was trying to grab the knife.
The commotion woke Jeannie, who rushed into the room to find her husband locked in a desperate struggle with the intruder. He was huge, a terrifying figure, Jeannie said. Ignoring her fear, she leapt into action, attempting to wrest the knife from the man's grasp. I tried grabbing the grip, but his hand was too big, so I just grabbed the blade, she recalled. Despite her efforts, the intruder's strength was overwhelming. Kevin, realizing the danger, shouted to Shay, "Call 911 and get my gun." Though the family didn't own a gun, Kevin's quick thinking rattled the intruder. Panicked, the man broke free and fled into the night, leaving the McDonoughs shaken but alive.
All in black, black pants, black mask, just a terrorizing figure. And he was huge.
I was saying, get the knife, get the knife.
The knife was very big. The blade was, I'm gonna say, that long. And so I tried to grab the grip of the knife, but the man's hand was huge and it was ineffective. It wasn't doing anything. So I just grabbed the blade of the knife because I didn't know what to do.
It was the scariest thing I've ever seen. I saw a knife, a guy that was probably 3 times the size of my dad, going after my mom and my dad.
I instinctively told my daughter, call 911 and get my gun. I don't have a gun, but something inside me told me to say that, which would keep him on his guard.
After the family struggled with the intruder for 5 harrowing minutes, Shay managed to break free and sprinted down the hall. Her hands trembled as she picked up the phone and dialed 911, her voice shaky as she relayed the terrifying events to the dispatcher.
What's going on?
A man came in and put it to my neck and his brother was there.
All right, just relax. Is he still there?
Meanwhile, Kevin and Jeannie clung to the man with every ounce of strength they had, determined not to let him escape. The struggle was intense, and Kevin could feel his grip slipping. It was then that he noticed blood streaming from his wife's hands, the result of her desperate attempt to wrest the knife away. That moment of distraction gave the intruder the opportunity he needed. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, the man rose from the bed, Kevin still clinging to his back.
And all of a sudden, he got a burst of adrenaline. He erected himself up off the bed with me on his back. That's when I knew I was in some deep.
When the man stood up with Kevin on his back, the knife slid through my hands. I thought, oh, this is it, we're all dead.
He stood up with me hanging on like a rag doll, Kevin would later recall. At that moment, I knew we were in real trouble. Jeannie, still bleeding from her hands, thought, this is it. We're not going to make it out alive. But just as the man tried to make his escape, Kevin lunged again, pulling him back toward the floor. Jeannie joined in, and together they tackled him near the door. The intruder thrashed wildly, trying to break free, but Kevin's wrestling experience kicked in. He managed to lock his arms around the man's neck in a chokehold.
When high school, I wrestled. I knew a chokehold was the only thing that a guy of this size that I had a chance on restraining him and taking him down was if I took his wind out. And I choked him on the throat and threw my weight back and pulled him with me, and we hit the floor.
Amidst the chaos, Shay, still on the phone with 911, urgently described every detail she could. Her voice wavered, but her resolve remained strong.
What does he look like?
I have no idea. He has a mask on.
I need you to stay on the line with me. He has a mask on, all black mask.
He's like a big guy.
Is he still in the house?
Yeah, my dad's holding him down.
Okay, the father has the guy held down right now.
For what felt like an eternity, the house was filled with the sounds of the struggle. Then suddenly silence. Shay waited anxiously outside the room, terrified of what she might find. Her heart raced as she spotted flashing lights through the window. The police had arrived.
You see the cruiser?
It just went by.
All right, go flag the cruiser down.
Okay.
Rushing to the door, she flagged them down and quickly explained the situation. Officers stormed inside, weapons drawn, and made their way to the bedroom. When Shay finally dared to look, she saw her father pinning the man to the ground, her mother standing over them, bloodied but determined, still holding the knife. Relief washed over her as officers handcuffed the intruder. For the first time that night, the McDonough family could breathe.
I didn't cry. I just immediately hugged my dad. He was really choked up. It really hadn't hit him yet. I don't think it hit any of us, what had happened.
As I left the room, Shay was with me. We just held on to each other for a little bit. And I wasn't going to let go of her for the life of me.
The man they had fought so valiantly against was identified as Adam Leroy Lane, a truck driver from North Carolina. At first glance, Adam seemed unremarkable, a family man with no significant criminal history.
His early 40s, he was a white male, and he had no significant criminal history.
We found that Adam lived in a house with his wife and kids in Jonesville, and Jonesville's a very quiet town in North Carolina.
But as police began investigating, they uncovered a chilling side to his seemingly ordinary life. Adam's truck, parked near the McDonough home, became a crucial piece of evidence. Inside, investigators found a trove of disturbing items: hunting knives, a leather mask with cutouts for the eyes and mouth, a fanny pack containing choking wires, and even a Chinese throwing star.
There's a couple of knives, large hunting knives, and there was also a fanny pack belt that had the knife sheaths hanging from it. There was choking wire, Chinese throwing star, and there was a leather mask with the eyes cut out and the mouth cut out.
Most unsettling of all was a DVD titled Hunting Humans, a low-budget horror film about a killer who murders for the thrill of it. The film's protagonist boasted, "Never have a motive. The easiest way for the cops to catch you is if you have a reason for killing." Adam had taken this mantra to heart. His murders mirrored scenes from the movie, each victim's throat slashed in a horrifyingly calculated manner. Detectives began piecing together Adam's movements, cross-referencing his trucking logs with unsolved murders across multiple states. One name that stood out was Monica Massaro, a 38-year-old woman from Bloomsbury, New Jersey, who had been brutally killed just weeks earlier. The details of her murder, a deep slash to the throat and no clear motive, fit Adam's pattern perfectly. Jeff Noble, the lead investigator in Monica's case, contacted the Massachusetts authorities holding Adam. At first, there was no concrete evidence linking him to Monica's death. But then a breakthrough came in the form of a receipt found in Adam's truck. Dated July 29, 2007, it placed him in Bloomsbury on the very night Monica was killed. This was the link investigators had been searching for. Jeff Noble traveled to Massachusetts to interrogate Adam. And initially, Adam appeared calm and polite, even cooperative. But something about his demeanor seemed off. For over an hour, he didn't ask why he was being questioned, a detail that struck Noble as significant.
On and off 20 years.
My initial impression of Adam Lane was that he was a very polite, respectful gentleman. He came across just like a regular guy.
For the first hour and a half of the interview, he never once asked us what crime we were investigating. And my impression of that is he didn't need to ask because he knew why we were there. He knew it and we knew it.
The turning point came when Noble mentioned the movie Hunting Humans.
They took movies that I had in the truck and made it seem like I was the worst mass murderer you ever seen in your life. Just because I like horror movies.
At the mere mention of the title, Adam's composure cracked. He looked away, shook his head, and muttered, "I'm done."
I packed up our stuff. We turned off the tape recorder. My partner and I got up to leave. We walked out of that room.
As Noble and his team prepared to leave the room, Adam motioned for them to stay. With a chilling calmness, he confessed to murdering Monica Massaro. He described the act in unsettling detail, admitting that he had planned her death with the precision of a scene from his favorite film.
She rolled against it, cut out here, best I can tell, and I'm no medic. Put this juggler thing right here.
What happened next time?
She bled to death. I didn't know nothing about it. Didn't take very long.
About how long?
But Adam's final words were perhaps the most haunting. Casually, he mentioned cleaning his knife every week, hinting that Monica's murder was far from his first and likely not his last. Despite extensive efforts, Adam refused to confess to any additional killings, leaving investigators to wonder just how many lives he had claimed during his cross-country routes. The McDonough family's bravery that night had stopped Adam Lane in his tracks. If they hadn't caught him, who knows how many more would have died, Noble said. We caught a serial killer in the early stages of his spree. Though Adam's confession brought some closure to Monica's family, the true scope of his crimes may never be known. Investigators are following leads into unsolved crimes along Adam Lane's truck routes in North Carolina, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Suspicion grew that his trail of violence extended far beyond the McDonough home invasion. Not long after Lane's arrest, authorities sent his knives to the lab, hoping to uncover the full scope of his crimes. What they found would solidify Lane's reputation as a serial predator. A series of trials awaited Adam Lane, starting with the case involving the McDonough family. The man who had terrorized their Chelmsford, Massachusetts home now faced charges that would expose his monstrous deeds. As news broke about the violent home invasion, it became clear Lane might also be responsible for multiple murders. His first court appearance for Monica Massaro's murder in New Jersey marked a turning point, but for the McDonoughs, it was personal. Shay McDonough and her parents had to face their attacker once again, this time in a courtroom. Without his mask, Lane's demeanor was even more unsettling. He looked like a caged animal, Jeannie McDonough recalled. He was disgusting. Lane was kept in a bulletproof plexiglass partition, separated from the family. But his predatory gaze never wavered, unnerving Shay as she took the stand to recount every horrifying detail of that night. "He wouldn't stop staring at me," Shay said. "That was the worst feeling in the entire world." Kevin McDonough's anger simmered as he described the struggle to protect his family. "I wanted to leap over the railing and get a punch in," he admitted. Despite the emotional toll, the McDonoughs stood resolute. With overwhelming evidence against him, Lane was sentenced to 25 to 30 years in prison for the attack on their family. Justice had been served, but it was just the beginning. Even after their legal battle ended, the McDonoughs felt compelled to support other victims' families. A month later, they traveled to New Jersey to attend Lane's trial for the murder of Monica Massaro. There, they met Monica's elderly parents and offered words of comfort. "I remember hugging Monica's mom and just feeling her pain," Jeannie said. The solidarity among the families was palpable. Lane's depravity was laid bare in court. Prosecutors revealed he had shown no mercy to Monica, slitting her throat and desecrating her body. Monica's parents wept as the judge sentenced Lane to 50 years in the New Jersey State Prison. The McDonoughs watched as Monica's family found some semblance of closure. Though the pain of their loss was still raw, the cases didn't end there. Investigators' determination to uncover Lane's full criminal history led them to Darlene Ewalt, a Pennsylvania woman brutally murdered in her home. Her husband, Todd Ewalt, had long been under suspicion, unable to prove his innocence. But when DNA results from Lane's knives came back, they told a different story. Lab analysis revealed DNA profiles from 5 victims, including Darlene Ewalt. This discovery allowed investigators to piece together the night of her murder. Lane had prowled her neighborhood, testing doors until he found her patio light on, sealing her fate. Darlene's courage in fighting back left evidence that ultimately brought justice. She was hunting him by giving us the information we needed, an investigator remarked, down to her very blood. Todd Ewalt, now vindicated, prepared to confront Lane in court. The McDonoughs and Massaros, bound by shared trauma, supported him and his family during the trial. We noticed Todd sitting outside the courthouse looking lost, Jeannie McDonough said. We introduced ourselves and offered whatever support we could. In the courtroom, Lane remained expressionless, seemingly indifferent to the devastation he had caused. He was a blank slate, Todd said. It's like he didn't even care. The emotional weight of the trial was immense, and Todd feared the defense might attempt to implicate him again. Ultimately, he accepted a plea deal that added 10 to 20 years to Lane's sentence, sparing his family the ordeal of a lengthy trial. Lane's total prison sentence now exceeded 80 years. For Todd, it wasn't about seeking the death penalty, but about ensuring Lane could never harm another family. Nothing can make up for all the pain he's caused, Todd said. Justice for me is knowing he'll never walk free. As the trial concluded, the Ewalt and McDonough families embraced in the courthouse hallway. I gave Todd a hug and just felt awful, Jeannie said. Why am I here and his wife isn't? Despite their grief, the families found solace in their shared resilience. A bond had formed among them, uniting them against the darkness Lane had brought into their lives. The McDonoughs reflected on their survival. I think about Monica and her family, and the Ewalts, and I say to myself, why were we so lucky? Jeannie said. She believed there was a greater power at work that night, one that allowed her family to stop Lane before he could claim more victims. He was sent to our house to be stopped. Their courage and quick thinking didn't just save their own lives. They stopped a predator in his tracks. By standing by other families in court, the McDonoughs became a symbol of strength and solidarity. Kevin McDonough, once described as the hero of that fateful night, remains humble. We're here because of him, Jeannie said. He saved us all. That's all for this video. We hope you have found this video informative and interesting. What are your thoughts about this case? Let us know in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon for more interesting videos like this. Thank you for watching our video.